This is one of the first lessons, and that's for a reason. I really want to make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to layers, frames, groups, and so on. Those are our building blocks of all of the elements that we're going to design in Figma. So layer is basically anything that appears in its own line in here in this left sidebar. If you have pages expanded, as I do, it's going to appear here below this line. If you don't have it expanded, it's basically going to be everything on the left sidebar. So it can be a shape like this, a rectangle, it can be a frame like this. Basically, all of these are layers that we use to build out our screens when we're designing in Figma. When it comes to frames, they're kind of similar to artboards in some other design applications that you might have used. So if you're coming from software like Photoshop or Illustrator, you're familiar with the term artboard. If not, no worries, it's not a prerequisite in any shape or form. But basically what I want to stress is that groups are something that you're going to use a lot more in other design tools than you're going to do in Figma. And that's because Figma was built with UX and UI design in mind, so it kind of removed the level that groups had and applied a lot of the reasons why we use group in some of those tools to frames. Frames are basically more powerful groups, and they're working aligned more with how web works, how mobile apps work, and so on. So a group is something that you would use only when you're moving things around and you want to do it quickly and kind of ensure that all of those things stay spaced out evenly as they would. But it's not something that you're going to necessarily use in any other place, honestly. I don't recall the last time I've used groups in Figma for anything meaningful. I just use it to quickly kind of do things and move them around. For everything that I was previously using groups in other tools for, I would now use frames for. And that's because frames are more advanced and they give you more flexibility when it comes to the sizing of elements, when it comes to the placement of elements. And I'm gonna demonstrate that. So, as we now know, layers are basically anything that happens in here. Most often we would refer to other like layers of shapes and images and elements that we use in design that appear in here. Even vectors that we draw ourselves or import into Figma, all of those things are layers. When it comes to frames, the difference in Figma versus all of the other design tools that you might have used or not is that frames can kind of nest within other frames. Usually something that we would see in other design tools that worked as frames were artboards that were like the sizes of the screens that we would design for, and then inside of it we would have layers and groups. Right now we could have like frames within frames within frames, and the main parent frame is actually the artboard also. So if you press A, you're gonna see the list of frames in here, and that's because in a lot of different tools, artboard is the name that we would use for all of those things. So if we're designing for an iOS app like this, we can just place in the size of the screen by tapping A, moving to all of the available preset sizes for frames, and we would just place a frame in here that represents our screen. We can call it however we want to. I'll just call this like iPhone for now. And inside of this, you can see the frame. It's always going to have this icon on the left side. You can see that you can then draw another frame inside of it by hitting like F. So F or A, it's still going to draw a frame. And you can see that now this is a nested frame inside of this frame. To demonstrate better the differences between groups and frames, I'm actually going to draw two rectangles right now. I'm just going to color them quickly, just so that we can see better what's happening. And we have these two frames, and if I hit Command G, it's going to create a group from them. You can always switch from a group to a frame by clicking in here. And now you can see that this group has nested layers inside that are representing these two rectangle shapes. And this group is basically going to have the width and height of these two elements as they're spaced around. So as you can see, between them, when it comes to the like left and right edge, this one has the width of 93, then there's 19 of spacing inside, so that's 112, and then this one again has 93, so 112 plus 90, it's gonna be 205. I'm guessing it's 205, and yes, that's the width of the group. And now that we know that, as soon as we move this item like this, the group width is going to change as well. That's important because that means that the group is always going to be the size of all of the elements that it's containing. While if we switch from a group to a frame, we now have more control over this. And the elements inside of this frame now have constraint options that we can really use to impact how we're working in Figma. So I'm going to duplicate this and just drag it outside for, again, demonstration purposes. And I'm going to bring this back into a group. So in here, inside of this group, you can see that there are no spacing rules that we can set up for this shape, while inside a frame we do have those constraints. So we can say that this one is always going to get stuck to the left and this one is always going to get stuck to the top. When it comes to this one, we can move it from top to bottom and from left to right, for example. And that means that we can now control, as we're moving the frame, this one is moving responsively with it as well. That's so powerful when you're designing. While in here, when we're working with a group, we would just be stretching that. That means that all of the elements inside of a group are always going to have their sizing put to scale. That means that as we resize this, it's also going to resize the elements. And that's not something that you're often going to want. Another thing to keep in mind is that we can also make frames smaller than the elements they're containing. And to do that, we would again have to kind of make sure that this one is not moving in a particular direction that we don't want. And you can see now that this frame is smaller, but it has elements that are going outside of it. And that's something that you're going to use a lot when you're designing in Figma. Another thing that's really important about frames is that as we have this element in here, we can also make things that are inside of the frame always visible by removing this option clip content. So we can now see that the frame is kind of smaller than this, and we can see this element going outside of it, but the element is still visible in our designs. So that's a little demo of the differences between the groups and frames, and why it's often better in design to use frames, because you have a lot more flexibility with all of the elements that are nested inside, and also the sizing of the main frame as well.